I've played maybe just like 2 or 3 hours of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth.
Which means you've barely played the game.
Literally barely played the game. I mean, most of the first half an hour was just cutscenes and learning about characters. A quick background, I don't really have a large background with this series, with Yakuza and Like a Dragon. I've attempted Yakuza 0 like twice. I don't know, just both times just bounced off of it. And I've tried like the second time at least, I played a lot. I was very interested by Yakuza 7, which was Like a Dragon, which was the first time that this game's protagonist was introduced.
Yeah.
Ichiban. But yeah, I don't feel like I need to catch up on everything to dive into Infinite Wealth. And the first 2 or 3 hours have done a pretty good job of, you know, it will never give you the full backstory of this really intricate series.
Yeah.
In such a short space of time, but I think they've given me enough information to go on to at least have a setup for what this game might be. So I'm still in Japan as Ichiban. He's kind of like working at a job higher place, like, you know, where people who are down on their luck can come and try and get a job. And there's been a huge dissolution of like the Yakuza clans, probably the events of the previous game. And so there's loads of these people on Yakuza looking for work, and Ichiban, being a previous Yakuza himself, kind of like understands the plight of these former criminals who now have to like try and find work, even though the government is banning them from getting work or being able to rent an apartment or even be able to like purchase a cell phone plan for 5 years after leaving the Yakuza, which seems a bit crazy.
Seems a bit much.
So that's kind of like the premise of this, is like you are helping these people find work in areas like legal work in areas of the field where their skills are useful. Like one guy early on is hired to work for a security company where he goes in and steals things at different shops so that they can evaluate their security systems. It's like that sort of stuff. It's like quite clever. But all of this is kind of like setting up the heart of the story of like Ichiban being this like hero of the downtrodden, and like everyone in the city kind of knows him for that. He's like the hero around there. And I'm very curious to see how it takes him from this setting, this scenario, and plops him in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Which is very different. And yeah, just a completely different setting for the game. I'm having a good time. I like the change to the turn-based combat that was introduced in the previous game. Although I've seen that this one has expanded on that quite a bit. It's like quite like action focused in a way. You get to move around during your turn. You've got this like radius around you that you can move around in, and that allows you to change your positioning before you decide on like an action. So you can maybe try line up to enemies, or you can move around so that you're closer to like a weapon, like a bike, so that when you press attack, he'll pick that up instead of just using his fists.
Of course.
So it's very contextual. Yeah, of course. You have to use a bike instead of your fists. That's just how this works. It's very contextual in that manner. It's also quite active, where like if you use a special ability, there's button presses that you can input that increase like the damage of that. When you are receiving damage from other enemies, you can time presses of like circle to try and perfect guard and take less damage from those attacks. So it's not just like press attack, wait for 3 people's turns to, go, and then it's your turn again. You are active in every single moment of this gameplay. So it does make it feel a lot more actiony. It's quite an interesting wrinkle to turn-based strategy, in the same way that Final Fantasy VII has kind of redefined that in its own way as well. And I quite like these interpretations of these turn-based formulas. So yeah, it's nowhere near as much of a Persona as I expected it to be in terms of the combat department, but I kind of like that. It seems like it's going to have a lot of depth, and for a game that is 40, 50, 60 hours long, that's kind of required. So yeah. Now I'm keen to get into it. I've heard this game doesn't really get going until hour 10, so I'm very far from that still. But I'm far more engrossed than I was in the early hours of Yakuza 0, which felt, I don't know, from the get-go there, I just was not vibing with it. And I was like waiting for something to grab me. But I think Ichiban is just a really endearing character, and I really like him. Yeah, it's really good. Also, just play with the Japanese voiceovers. It's really, really, really good.
I'm sure. This is one of those games where I know I'd absolutely love it. But
I think you would, yeah. I really do.
I think the thing that always puts me and others off, it's like, oh my God, it's Yakuza or Like a Dragon. There's a million titles that came before it. Where do I even begin?
Yeah.
And then, you know, if not that any person would do this, but if I were to play all of them are 40, 50, 60 plus hours long. It's like
and some of them are old now, like
mammoth undertaking. Yeah,
the gameplay is old for a lot of them. But that was my thinking. I was just like, I'm never gonna do.
Yeah,
this.
You might as well just pick it up.
Exactly. Like if I'm thinking like, oh, to play the game that is coming out today, I have to play 7 other games. Like I'll just never get to it. By the time if I even make it, like I'll be burnt out on it. So like, why not just give this one a go? You know, and if I'm really into it and I really want to understand the story in more nuanced ways, you can either start playing the other ones or YouTube it. You know, a lot of people are introduced to new things like this, you know, out of order, and then they go back and play things and then appreciate it in a whole new way. So I think, you know, coming from a perspective of like, I don't know enough about the story to say if you need to play the others. I just know that like I'm not feeling lost at the beginning of this game. Like I feel like I've got enough to go on already. And yeah, so I think it does a good job there. But that does mean these first 2-3 hours, super exposition heavy. Like, oh my God.
Like what is going on?
Like amazing. Recapping of events when characters weren't even asking for them. You know what I mean? So yeah.
It's like I'm glad you asked.
Yes,
like,
I'm having a bad day. It's
like
like this time 3 years ago when the Yakuza clans died. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about?
Spoilers. Oh my God.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's real fun. And it's also just goofy. It's just really, really stupid.
Yeah, I think like I know why I love the Yakuza series is because it is this thing of it's super serious until it's not. It's like it straddles both.
It is a telenovela with
100%
comedy. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, us two good Portuguese boys coming from households where those Portuguese telenovelas are on all the time. We can understand what a good one is.
I'm the
drama. The drama.
The drama. Yeah.
And even better, it's in a language we don't understand again. So it's just so nostalgic.
This hits all the right feels.
This one has subtitles at least.
Amazing. Oh yeah. Thank God.